Welcome, everyone. My name's John. I organize this group, Sit Heads Meditation Club. So Sit Heads is a sitting and social group for people interested in deep meditation practice. Everything we do is free and donation-based. And if you want to hang out with us, you can find us at sit-heads.com. We don't have any one set teacher here at Sit Heads. We're more of a peer group, but we do have wonderful visiting teachers and other guests join us from time to time, like tonight's guest, the astonishing Susan Piver. I was just looking for the right adjective, Susan. I think I found it. I think I got it. So I'm super excited to talk with Susan, a wonderful meditation teacher, because she combines a deep and extensive personal practice with a focus as a teacher on connecting Dharma with everyday life in an accessible way. And that's a juxtaposition that I really appreciate. So she leads programs all over the place on mindfulness, innovation, communication, relationships, and creativity. She has studied Buddhism since 1995. She graduated from a Buddhist seminary in 2004 and was authorized to teach in 2005. She also runs the Open Heart Project, the world's largest online-only meditation center, and she is the best-selling author of 9 books. So that is Susan Piver. We're very lucky to have her with us. Yeah. Susan, is there anything you want to say before we get started with our conversation?
Yeah, I would like to, well, first, thank you for the lovely introduction. And indeed, the Open Heart Project is the world's largest online-only meditation center, but it is also the only online meditation center. So it is also the smallest. So I think it's only fair to point that out.
That's fair enough. Yeah. All right, groovy. So what we're going to do is Susan and I are going to chat for the next 24 minutes. That's my privilege. I got to have a one-on-one conversation with Susan. I find that also helps sort of seed the Q&A, gives you a sense of the sort of stuff that you might want to ask Susan about. So we'll do that. And then at the hour mark, we'll open it up to Q&A with all of you. So Susan, you ready to get started and chat? Okay, cool. So why don't we start with the jumping off from the mention of the Open Heart Project. So you have an online, you run this online Sangha, this online spiritual community. And, a lot of the folks here are regular Sit Heads, members of a different online contemplative community. And we are interested, as I'm sure many or all of the people in your community are, in serious practice, deep practice, as you and I sort of discussed, right? Going beyond also wonderful reasons to practice, like stress relief and greater calm and so forth, but really going for transformation or the experience of deep truth, or however you want to put it. So I guess my question is, as someone who has been running an online group for something like 9 years, what's your advice for us, your practical advice on how to engage with an online, not in-person community, but in a way that facilitates truly deep practice and really helps us sort of get in there and walk the path in a serious way?
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Well, I have 4 answers. And the first answer is the most important, I think, and it's lineage. I find that to be, that's what brings everything together, is lineage. So I completely appreciate anyone who wants to have a sitting group and explore teachings and talk about those teachings and support each other. All of those things are great, obviously. So I don't mean to say anything to the contrary, but without a lineage, it tends to be a conversation as opposed to a practice. I mean, the practice, you all have your practice, I'm not saying otherwise, but to teach meditation and to practice meditation is more than just someone explaining it to you, because we all learn, someone told us how to do it, or you could look at a video or read a book in countless ways, but to what the way I was trained to really get started on the path, your path, whatever that might be, not my path, but whatever yours is, to learn to practice is a transmission rather than an explanation. Something is transmitted from teacher to student, and that something is predicated on lineage. I was taught to meditate by my meditation teacher, who was taught to meditate by his meditation teacher, by her meditation teacher, and so forth and so on, presumably back to the Buddha, which does not mean that I am a stand-in for the Buddha, but there's something unbroken there beyond conventional thought that is important. So that's one. And then the thing that I have found that is most important, besides lineage, are the three jewels. The three jewels that guide one along the Buddhist path. Although no one has to be a Buddhist to receive guidance from the three jewels: Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So Buddha means awake, as you know. So every time you sit down to meditate, you connect with that first jewel, awakefulness. You got that one. But we often leave out the other two. Dharma, discussion, study, contemplation, that also has to be a part of it. Otherwise, the practice tends to be something on your to-do list. But the most important is Sangha, to be together with others who are also attempting to do this practice. So the three jewels, though they're 2,500 years old as a teaching, are absolutely relevant. And so in the Open Heart Project, I feel like we do our best to offer all three jewels. There's meditation, there's a teacher, happens to be myself, but small t teacher, not big T teacher. And Dharma, classes, programs, ways to study, and of course, Sangha. And those three things create a sustainable practice. I'll leave it there. What do you think about that, John?
Oh, I think it's really useful, and I have some thoughts on it. It certainly brings up some stuff because, we were talking about this earlier. There are what you might call subcultures on the internet around Dharma. You might call them pragmatic Dharma, or they have a bunch of names. I just generally think of it as sort of internet Dharma, internet meditation stuff. They hang out on message boards, they hang out on Reddit. They're not hard to find. But there is a really strong ethos. And I guess Sit Heads is sort of loosely affiliated with that, though I think how we do things tends to be pretty different. Though I'm sure all of those are unique in their own ways. But there is a very strong DIY ethos. And there is a feeling of almost a very deliberate bucking of the idea of lineage. There's a sense of almost feeling like you shouldn't have to be constrained, like this should be open sourced in a sense. Mm-hmm. It's not something where you should have to, where that should be gatekept, and that's, I think, one pejorative spin to put on the idea of needing to connect with a teacher, needing to connect with a lineage. And I really appreciate what you're saying, because I like it when someone takes a position and has a strong point of view, because it's very easy to get, I think meditation teachers are generally lovely people. And so we want to be agreeable, and so I appreciate someone just sort of laying it down and being like, well, if you don't have a lineage, I mean, good luck, but so I kind of appreciate that. But what do you say to folks who feel that those are, I don't know, 19th century ideas? We're in the information age. We have access to technology that allows communication, allows the dissemination of ideas in a way that wasn't available when these earlier paradigms emerged and were dominant. Yeah, what would you? I'm not saying I am such a person, but but pretend I'm such a person. What would
Okay,
you
fair
say?
enough.
Yeah,
I would say good luck.
fair enough.
Do it. Good luck. If everyone's path is different, I'm not trying to be wishy-washy here, but good luck. If you want to figure it out, if you want to make it up, if you want to say, oh, that 2,500 years of Buddhist practice that's already been, codified and written down, and you want to ignore that, go ahead. And I'm not trying to be sassy. I'm not saying that you are suggesting that.
No, no,
But
no.
in terms of the open source, I think it's really, if I, Susan, keep trying to just make a decision, okay, now I'm going to study this, now I'm going to go in that direction, now I'm going to just effing recreate my own mind over and over and over and over again. And I'm kind of sick of her. She's got her very good qualities, but I cannot discover the wisdom path with my conventional mind. I've tried. I can't. And then when it comes to lineage in general, it doesn't have to be a formal lineage. Like everybody here has a lineage already. It may be a Buddhist lineage, it may be a Christian lineage, it may be a lineage of artists, or a lineage of teachers, or a lineage of people who have no lineage. But you're connected to something. And to put that, to disavow those connections as support is very lonely. And then the last thing I'll say, and I know I cut you off, I do want to hear what you were going to say about the 2,500 years. There's a difference between pursuing one's path with one's own intelligence, which is abso-fucking-lutely essential. There is no teacher beyond your mind. Your mind is the teacher. The inner guru is everything. But if I just use my conventional mind, I'm sorry for cursing, I end up in chaos, not an open source field of treasured opportunities. I just have chaos. And I can mistake that, and I'm saying that because I have, for progress. But it's materialistic, spiritually materialistic, as the controversial and powerful Chogyam Trungpa would have said. What do you think?
Yeah, so I'm entering into this conversation as someone who actually, I do have a teacher, a main teacher that I work with directly, and I'm currently adhering to a tradition that follows, that I follow, so I'm with you. I realized that I was essentially asking sort of a complex multi-partite question in a way that's almost not fair, because there are different dimensions. And you sort of touched on a couple of them. So there's lineage in the sense of having a teacher, right? Someone that you work with. And then there's lineage in terms of having a tradition or a practice style, right? And so, like, for instance, these people who are open sourcing, they may hew very closely to a given tradition, but they're learning it from books, they're learning it from peer discussion. They don't necessarily have that connection to a formal teacher who then has a teacher before them, who has a teacher before them. So it's sort of multi-axial, right? And I appreciate you touching on, even though I phrase it somewhat fuzzily, I appreciate your sort of unbraiding it and parsing it out a little bit. And it brings me to another question, which is, so lineage is important. In your view, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but essentially you can't keep changing horses midstream and expect to get anywhere.
You can get somewhere. You can get somewhere. But anyway, go ahead. Finish your thought, please.
Oh, okay.
All right.
It's what I was going to say was that what I was going to ask is it possible for a person who does sort of pick a path to nonetheless benefit from other teachers, other traditions, and to draw insight, other perspectives, look at things from different angles without it devolving into dabbling or midstream horse changing or any of that stuff that might be counterproductive. Because, one of the reasons I'm asking this is because I know that a lot of your roots are in, maybe all of your roots are in the Vajrayana tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. And there are a lot of people on this call I know who are not Vajrayana practitioners. They practice in other traditions. So I'm wondering, how can they learn from you what are the best practices they can follow to learn from a teacher in a different lineage while still respecting their lineage and without sort of diluting what they're doing or dabbling?
Yeah. Well, it's an inner, you can study anything you want, I believe. I mean, I hope so, because I do. It's truly, and I hope this doesn't sound trite, but it's truly what is a heart connection. I want to know more about this. I'm very magnetized by that. When this person talks, I want to know more. Those are the things that I think are best to follow. And they may look like, traditional teachings connected to your lineage, or they may not. But it's a matter of trusting yourself and allowing the path to unfold. This is one of the things that I think I don't know much about the internet Dharma, but I get what you're pointing to. I don't feel that I am authoring my own path, as it were, after 25 years of practice, but I'm shepherding it. It has its own life, it wants to go here, it wants to go there. I hate it, I love it, just like a relationship. So what does it need? My question to myself is, what will deepen my practice? Whatever that practice is, what will deepen it? And if it's reading everything that Carl Jung ever wrote and going on shamanic journeys, okay, great. Let's do those things.
Fair enough. Let's switch it up.
Okay.
What does it take for a layperson to get awakened?
I don't know. I don't know. Do you?
I wouldn't be asking if I did.
Yeah, no. According to the theory, you're already awake, so mission accomplished. I'm curious, why do you choose the word layperson?
I guess what I mean is, layperson technically just means, of course, as you know, not a monastic. But what I really mean is someone who is embedded in the web of relationships and responsibilities that we usually think of as composing mundane life: jobs, families, friends, hobbies. A person who in many ways looks like your garden variety human. Right. So I guess my question is, I asked it perhaps provocatively, but we're people who are trying not just to relieve a little bit of stress, which is an absolutely admirable and wonderful reason to practice contemplative practice, but or to calm ourselves, or to perform a little better at work. All those things are terrific, but this is a group that is geared more towards people trying to transform, trying to awaken. And awakening is a loaded term, but it does have meanings according to whatever lineage you practice in. And I guess what I'm wondering is, one thing that intrigues me about you is you talk about career, you talk about relationships, you talk about these quote unquote mundane things, but I also know that you talk about awakening, you teach about it, and that deep Dharma practice with an orientation toward awakening is something that matters to you. At least that's my understanding, and that you concern yourself with. So, yeah.
The deepest practice is living your life. That is the deep practice. What you do on the cushion prepares you to do that, or supports you to do that. But the deep practice is almost never on the cushion, at least in my experience. It's in my life. So as I was trained, there are three paths to enlightenment. One you mentioned, the monastic path. You turn your back on the things of this life to devote yourself fully to practice and study and all the things. You isolate. The second path is called the path of the forest yogi, or the wandering mendicant. The people that go out with begging bowls and just throw themselves into the circumstance of planet Earth and sit in a cave for 3 years or just wander. Also completely eliminating every aspect of conventional life. And like Mingyur Rinpoche did that a few years ago. So it's not something that doesn't happen anymore. Those are two of the three. The third path is called the householder path, which is the opposite. You don't turn your back on the things of this life. You take those things as your practice. And at least in the Vajrayana view, which is the only place I've ever practiced, so I'm ignorant of other things. In the Vajrayana view, I found this personally very fascinating. The householder path is not considered a layman's path or a lay person's path. It is a fully tricked out path to liberation. But your relationships are your practice, your career is your practice, your housekeeping is your practice, your breakfast is your practice. And some say it's the most difficult path, but it is just as sacred as the other paths.
So what would it look like? Let's get really concrete. Making your breakfast your practice. As a practical matter, let's paint a picture. You're sitting in front of your bowl of overnight oats or whatever. What does it mean to make breakfast your practice?
Everybody's got to sort of figure it out for themselves, but I think it means attending to what's actually happening. Just tasting it, cleaning it when you're done, taking care, paying attention to details is a very beautiful and important part of that as a practice. Tasting it, liking it, not liking it, whatever you're experiencing, how is that, how is that not meditative? In meditation, you place your mind on the breath. Other things too, images and mantras, but let's just say the breath. And then when you get distracted, and the main distraction is, am I doing this right? And am I getting anywhere? But then there's other distractions like, is it over yet? Or do I have cancer? Or what should I do for the rest of the day? The things that one thinks. And then you get distracted. So you're distracted and you come back. So it's the same with eating your breakfast. You just are eating it and then you get distracted. Is this good for me? And, am I losing too much weight, gaining too much weight? Oh, you just come back to what you're actually doing, which is awake, according to the legend. Being an unenlightened person myself, you come back, there is no thing other than awake. Thus I have heard.
Sounds like a very enjoyable breakfast.
Yeah, sometimes.
It sounds very nice. I'm going to try and make my next breakfast like that. Though I'm a cereal eater. That's really neither here nor there.
You can eat really fast and get crumbs and just, inhale your breakfast. I'm not saying you have to eat it like this, but just notice that that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you're good.
So in your tradition, do you ever do things like, I studied for a few years in the Tibetan tradition earlier on in my own practice. So my experience with it is old and also not very deep. But are there other practices peculiar to the Vajrayana, to Tibetan Buddhism? I've heard teachings about envisioning everything as a Buddha field, envisioning all beings as Buddhas, and those seem like they're not being hyperbolic. They are instructing the student to actually do that, to walk around sort of like, you're a Buddha, you're a Buddha, you're a Buddha, there's a Buddha field. You're a Buddha. Is that a practice that is prescribed for daily life, sort of awakening practice? And what does that do?
Yeah, I don't know that practice. So
No?
you're a Buddha, you're a Buddha. No.
No, fair enough. That was, some of my Dzogchen teachers said to imagine everyone around you as a Buddha, imagine everywhere you go as a Buddha field. But maybe that was just a peculiar thing.
Oh, that sounds
for
good.
them.
The Vajrayana path starts where every path starts. It starts with shamatha vipassana meditation, mindfulness awareness practice. You do that for your whole life. You should do that for your whole life. You don't have to do anything else. If you want, you can do other things. And there's countless practices. Visualizations, front visualizations, self-visualizations, guru yogas, different sadhanas connected to different deities, Avalokiteshvara, Manjushri, all, the main bodhisattvas, and there are countless practices. Dzogchen is the highest practice of the Nyingma school of Tibetan Buddhism, and is, I've never heard it suggested that you should just try it, although of course you can, but that it takes some instruction and some guidance, because it's like getting one eyeball to look at the other eyeball. You can just get completely twisted up and think you're doing it, but you're not, or think you're not doing it and you are. And of course, no one can tell you if you are or aren't. And then there's Mahamudra practice, the highest practice of the Kagyu lineage of Tibetan Buddhism. And then I don't know what they are for the Gelug and the Sakya lineages, but at the beginning, as I was starting to say, is shamatha vipassana, just mindfulness awareness practice. And then if you want, you can go on this vast journey of nundros and visualizations, and at the end, you come back to this practice, shamatha vipassana. It's the ground practice, it's the path practice, and it's the fruitional practice. It is everything. It just sort of depends on your mind, I guess. So it's as formless of a meditation practice as you can get. And then you can go on all these form meditations and perhaps experiment with Dzogchen, which is ultimate in formlessness. But in a sense, you're just coming back to shamatha when you do that.
Very like me at 22 to be like, oh, I should do the absolute highest practice. I've been meditating for 4 months. This seems appropriate. I have
the highest teachings. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, nothing. Go for it.
I respect you for just thinking I'm going right for the mountaintop.
Oh yeah, I'm entitled to that, right? That should be mine.
I can do that. So there's a notion in Vajrayana Buddhism, maybe in other schools too, called self-secret. Self-secret. The highest teachings are right out there. You can watch YouTube videos about them, you can read books about them, you can do them, but they remain secret until the mind of the practitioner is ready to see the truth about them.
Yep.
So they're self-secret. So you can't screw them up. No one can ruin them. Yeah. They're right out there, but you don't see them until you see them.
Yeah, they have a sort of child-proof lid on them.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And if folks want to, you said people will talk about them. You could learn about them. You could watch a video of Orgyen Choang Rinpoche teaching them to this group on our website. But
that's amazing.
But child-proof lid. That's right. Yeah. One of my teachers said something like, getting the Dzogchen instructions is like lighting a candle. But if you haven't bothered to make a candle, if you haven't gotten a wick, if you haven't put the wax together, then you're just sort of, what are you doing?
That seems right.
All right, let's open it up, shall we? Is that all right?
Oh, yes, delightful.
Awesome. So thank you for talking with me. And thanks for hanging out and giving an hour and a half of your time. Very, very generous.
It's really fun.
To talk with all of us. I'm glad you're having fun. Let's keep it up. So, all right. Lindsay S., would you like to ask your question?
Hi.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hi. So, anyway, yeah, I have a question for Susan. And Susan, I don't know if you might recognize me, but I did a retreat with you at Shambhala Mountain Center
Oh,
probably about 4 years ago or something.
oh yeah. Now I
So
do see. Yeah, yeah. Nice to see you.
nice to see you. So, yeah, um, I have a question about lineage. So I myself, I've moved a lot. So my root practice has always been Zen, but I've moved. So like I spent like a couple of years practicing in the Shambhala tradition, which is how when I went on the retreat with you, and then I sort of returned to Zen for the past couple of years, and that's um, been my tradition the longest time, right? And so I belong to a Sangha with a clear lineage, right? And but I also formed a group where I live to sit with people who, because I understand that some people might be averse to some kinds of traditions for cultural reasons, you know.
Mhm.
So I wanted to help people, you know, just to sit. I'm not a teacher, you know, just more of a guide, right? And if anybody were to ask me to deepen their practice, I would say, well, find a lineage, right? So, and nobody's really asked me that yet. But when you say the word lineage, how would you define that? Because I'm in agreement with what you're saying. And I just, and I know what what it kind of means to me, but I don't know how to explain it to somebody who's sort of outside of like the Buddhist know-how kind of, you know.
So if someone in your group says, where can I learn more? Or I like this, I would like to go deeper, as you say,
Hmm.
what I would suggest, rather than pointing to lineage, you could try this, you could try that, to point to teachers. Like, who do you like to listen to? Who do you like to learn from? Maybe it's, I don't know who, John Tarrant Roshi or Pema Chodron, or, oh, okay, good. Start there. Go find out more about that teacher. Listen to them more. Who were their teachers? Connect with them. Learn who they were. And eventually something starts to come to the fore. Like, oh, everything I like is in this area. Or not, but usually you find the strain or the strain finds you. But what doesn't seem to work is pros and cons of the various lineages and then making
Yeah,
a
I
conceptual
agree.
choice. It's good to do that research, obviously. And I understand your point also about people not wanting, you know, tradition because there's just so much bad juju connected with it at the same time. But anyway, if I have understood your question, it's look for teachers that you like and then follow the breadcrumbs.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I appreciate the
Thanks,
question.
Lindsay. Thank you, Susan.
Mhm.
Stephen, would you like to ask your question?
Sure, thanks. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Stephen.
Thanks for answering questions with us.
My pleasure.
I'm interested in your distillation of the exchange or crossover between your practice and your relationships. I feel like I've seen a lot of change in the way I relate over time, but I haven't really, it all seems kind of interdiffused all over, and I haven't really picked out like what it is. So I'm wondering from your experience and with the research you've done writing your book, what's the like pith of what you took away from your Buddhist practice that has been helpful for you in relationship?
Thank you for the question. And I have done no research. So let me just say that. I've only had my personal experience and, you know, discussions with friends who are having their personal experiences. But I don't know how, I've been married for 23 years. I don't know how the hell that happened. but I don't know how I could have done it without my practice. Because, and I would be curious to hear if you have found this, over time, oh, look, I'm more patient. My heart breaks more readily at your pain. Or when things go poorly between us, I'm a wreck. And things go well, I'm overjoyed. And then if I study something like the paramitas, generosity, discipline, patience, exertion, mindfulness, and wisdom, I don't think about how can I apply those to my relationship, but I find they come to mind when there's something good happening or bad happening or confusing. They deploy themselves. So that's how it seems to work. And you say you've noticed things. So I don't want to dig into your private life, but what have you noticed? And is what I'm saying resonant?
Yeah, definitely. I would say some parts have been very useful, whereas others like kind of marginally. I definitely think that being the sensitization and being more in tune and connected when interacting is, a byproduct of practice. And also heart practices like the Brahma Viharas, or just, practicing on the paramitas and thinking about them, or just noticing them, making note of them when they're there, have been very helpful for me. So yeah,
That's great.
resonates.
Yeah, the teachings are like a good illness or a good, they get in your blood. And then you start to see the world through the lens of the teachings, not because you told yourself you should, but because it's true for you. And so they become your closest companions. And yeah, Rick says paramitas means transcendent actions. They are the 6 things, although there's also versions of them where there's 9 and 27 and so on. But the 6 paramitas are generosity, discipline, patience, exertion, meditative absorption, and wisdom. And they are very connected to the Mahayana schools. For instance, Zen is these are central teachings, but also other schools. And the Brahma Viharas are the 4 immeasurables: loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. Also very deeply rooted in Mahayana school. But thank you for asking that, Rick.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you both. Rick, would you like to ask your question?
Cool. Yeah, thank you, Susan, for being here. I was just curious I think you can answer as you please, but I'm curious when you said, you talked on lineages, and in particular, something I haven't really heard anyone say before is, well, perhaps your lineage is a lineage of artists, or what really caught my ear was a lineage of people who have no lineage, because I so far have not found any meditation teacher where it's like, this is it. And outside of that, you even mentioned maybe Christianity is your lineage. Like, I find my father's religious practice to be hollow. I find my mother's religious beliefs to be agreeable, but not necessarily to come with a practice. So I guess I'm curious, what does it look like for someone to lean into these kind of non-conventional lineages?
That's a great question. So I'll tell you a brief story. And this happened at Shambhala Mountain Center, which Lindsay mentioned. I was there, and some classical musicians came to spend a few days there, and they fell in love with this retreat center. And they were like, oh, one of them was a cellist who just won the Pablo Casals international competition, was traveling with Pablo Casals cello. And this was like high tone. And they wanted to make a recording for Shambhala Mountain Center to sell and keep the proceeds. I used to work in the music business a million years ago, and somehow I got the job of producing it, I guess. Oh, well, let's get a 24-track mobile unit up here. Let's find the right space let's get an actual engineer, blah, 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 blah. And it was determined that the best room, and this relates to your question, I promise, to record this in was the top floor of this edifice called a stupa, which is a building built in memory of a great teacher. There's 3 stories to sort of evoke the bottom, the trunk, and the top of an actual sitting Buddha. But the first floor was public, the second floor was reserved for people doing certain practice, chakra samvara practice, and the third floor was reserved, even smaller, reserved for people doing a different practice. You couldn't go in there. But that was the room with the best acoustics. So we're like, oh, what do we do? What do we do? Okay, we got special dispensation to learn to go into that room. But then I started to think, well, I don't want to mess up the juju in there. You know, if we just stomp in there. And so my own meditation teacher was there. It happened to be at Shambhala Mountain Center by coincidence. And we were walking, we were circumambulating the stupa, just talking and catching up. He's not Tibetan, by the way, he's just a dude, an awesome dude, who's been my meditation instructor for 25 years. I said, how do we do this up there without screwing it up? And he said, oh, it's easy. You just make offerings, request blessings, and dedicate the merit. So now we're getting to your question. That's how you keep that's how you keep a practice spiritual, sacred, not self-help, not self-improvement, not something to accomplish, because there is nothing to accomplish. And when we try to build something out of our practice, we get bitch slapped over and over again. It's just so ridiculously simple. So make offerings, you know, in a traditional sense, you actually have a shrine, you put something on it, you light a candle, that's fine. You don't have to do those things though. The essential offering is, I offer myself. I offer myself. I'm crabby, I'm feeling great, all of the above, that, here you go. Then the second step, request blessings of your lineage. So in the traditional sense, you actually say their names. Vajra, Dara, Tilo, Naro, Marpa, Mila. You just like, I hold your lineage, grant your blessings so that I will follow your example. They're formal chants. They're quite beautiful and mysterious. So if you have a traditional formal practice, you evoke your teachers. But you don't have to have that because you already have a lineage or lineages, and it's in here. So you may think, oh, I think personally, oh, here's my Buddhist teachers. They're sitting over here. It really helps me to think, oh, we're doing this together. Because in some sense, we are. They're in my heart. Over here, Bob Dylan, Rainer Maria Rilke, the Bubbies and the Zadies from my, Ukrainian heritage. They're there too, in my heart. The beings that I admire the most, that's why I say Bob Dylan and Rilke. And you have such beings. Everybody does. And you feel so compelled by them because you are in their lineage. Otherwise, you wouldn't feel it. You are one of them. So you sort of feel them. They're great examples of people, the lineage of people who have no lineage. Every cowboy, every accountant, there are lots. But you actually think of them and bring them into the practice with you. And it can look like anything that's true for you. So it can be your cultural heritage, it can be your religious heritage, it can be the lineage of artists, the lineage of teachers, the lineage of gardeners, the lineage of friends, the lineage of mothers. And then you do your practice. And then at the end, the traditional, in my lineages anyway, it's not particular, is to dedicate the merit. It's called to give away, to just have this sense of I offer the fruits of my practice to everyone. And those 3 steps, make offerings, request blessings to your practice, dedicate the merit, you can do those things. You don't have to have a teacher or be connected to a formal lineage. But it's a creative act. And your creative mind, I feel, is not different than the inner teacher. That was a long answer. What do you think, Rick?
I am very grateful for the answer. Thank you. I've never thought to do those things. Yeah, like people were definitely people and were popping into my head as you talked about lineages, like forests that I've spent a lot of time in were coming into my head. So yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, that's so great. I feel that way about the desert. I feel a real heart connection to that climate. So that's fantastic. And yeah, good luck with that. That'll be fun, I think.
Thank you.
Fun exploration.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you,
You're welcome.
Rick. So I have a question for you, Susan, which is, do you have suggestions on ways to help keep the practice front and center during times in one's life when a bunch of other stuff is competing for attention? You know, I find myself when I'm on retreat, oh my, you know, I'm bowing, I'm kissing the feet of the Dharma. It's everything, right? And it's so clear. It's so obvious that it's everything, right? And that everything else is just a part of the Dharma and feeds into the Dharma. And you just want to sort of bow to it. And then, you know, fast forward 5 days and I'm worried about, you know, my revenue projections for this quarter. And I'm worried if some of my friends are hanging out without me. And I'm just worried about all this crap. And suddenly the Dharma starts feeling much more academic. I do my practice because it's habit, which is good. But that feeling of it really being in front of me, you know, really being my priority, that starts to fade. And I'm wondering if you have thoughts on what a person can do when the world is pulling you in all these other directions in terms of prioritizing other things. How do you keep it sort of that visceral felt sense of the importance of practice, the importance of the path?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm hearing weird noises outside my apartment. So
Everything okay?
yeah, they're building a subway stop out there. So, you know, there's always a lot of weird noises. So harking back, well, your experience, I'm sure everyone can relate to, by the way. I know I can. Like, yeah, we don't live monastic lives, so we can't be on retreat. Everybody feels, and I'm 99% of everyone I've ever talked to, well, I met a couple people that don't have this problem, and maybe you are one of them. They have trouble with consistency. Or they're consistent, but their heart's not in it. What's wrong with me? What's my problem? What can I do to fix this? And I one time someone asked that, and I'm like, wait, it's mathematically, I'm not a mathematician, but it's mathematically impossible for 90% of people to lack the discipline to be serious practitioners in everyday life. It's just not possible. Maybe 10%, maybe 50, but not 99. So you need the 3 jewels. And they're essential to your practice, and you have them. The practice itself, the study of the practice, or the contemplation of the results of the practice, and then Sangha, to practice together with others. Those things are really important. They're essential. And we usually leave out the last 2 jewels. Sometimes, you know, I can feel in myself, or I can feel in others in the Open Heart Project, for example, they're really angry at themselves. like, I suck. I'm a bad practitioner. Well, I don't feel like doing it, so I'm not doing it. But I know I should do it, and so forth and so on. That happens to me all the time. So sometimes I suggest, here's your practice. Don't practice. That's your practice right now. Just take it off the table. Do not practice. Figure out a time frame, 2 weeks, 1 month, 3 days, and then don't do it. Even if you feel like, oh, well, I probably could do it today. I kind of want to. Don't do it. And then observe the experience of not practicing, not to teach yourself a lesson, but to feel that as your practice. I'm not suggesting that to you, John, but it can, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is it can be creative and it should be accommodating. And always the answer is increased gentleness toward oneself. That actually is the highest practice and the hardest practice. And get a cat, because they really like it when you sit and meditate. They just come sit on your lap.
We're a big fan
You can't
of
have
cats
this
on
cat.
Zoom. We love
Pardon me?
cats. We love cats on Zoom here. So
With cat butts, they always like to show you their butts. Yeah, good. I love cats on Zoom too. Oh, you little cat.
that's really helpful because, I think you're right. If I look at what I was sort of implicitly saying, I think without even realizing it, some part of me is like, oh, how can I hold my nose to the grindstone more effectively, right? There's a tone to it that is, I don't want to say self-flagellating, but has this air of yeah, sort of grim discipline. And surely that's not the way.
Surely that's not the way. I agree. And discipline, as you probably know, especially the discipline, paramita discipline, is synonymous with joy.
Mm.
Discipline and joy are synonymous. Discipline is not synonymous with beating yourself up. But the definition that I like to apply is it just means come back. And you know how to do that. You sit, you place your attention on your breath, you get distracted, and then you come back. That's all that is meant by discipline. Can you come? Can you come back? And of course you can. So it's a very simple gesture. So, and I appreciate you hearing more gentleness towards John. That's great.
Thank you, Susan. This was so great. And I know you're a busy person. You have your own very busy online community that you're helping to manage and lead and teach. So thank you for taking some time for us. I want to thank all of you for your time, your attention, your practice, and keep coming back. We do this every Thursday. So I hope you all have a wonderful holiday. Susan, any final things you want to say before we say goodnight?
Oh, just thank you. Thank you for including me. It's so nice to connect with your Sangha, and I really enjoyed it. And I just appreciate the invitation. Thank you, John.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I had a blast. I'm sure that folks here had a really valuable and enjoyable experience. So thank you for being here with us, and have a good night, everybody.